Yellowstone Volcano, the supervolcano. Something unusual is happening. This is what geologists are revealing. They've discovered something unusual that occurred at the park which left them baffled. According to a documentary on this by Callum Hoare on Express UK, Yellowstone caldera, as we know, is labeled that way because it is a supervolcano, and due to its ability to inflict devastation worldwide, is pinned between the states of Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. The volcano is always monitored by the USGS for signs that a supervolcanic eruption, a super eruption, may be on its way. But geologists experienced a brief spell of uncertainty in 2004 because something unusual and unexplained happened. The Smithsonian Channel's miniseries titled "This Could Be the Next Mount St. Helens" detailed what scientists were astonished by. It was unexplainable. The narrator explained in 2015, quote, "There have been 3 super eruptions over the past 2.1 million years. The last big one, the super eruption, was 640,000 years ago." Now, we know that from what USGS has told us, there have been many eruptions since then. 130,000 years ago, 70,000 years ago, and since the 70,000 year major eruption, there have been another 80 eruptions since then. Basically, they said it's every 6,000 years, and we're overdue for a major eruption. Not a super eruption, but a major eruption. Now, from what the geologists are saying, the one before that was 666,000 years prior, which leads many to wonder what could be next. There have been signs that something unusual is happening in the park. In 2004, 5 bison were found dead in a geyser basin. The 5 animals were discovered by the park rangers, and they alerted the geologists at USGS. Dr. Hank Hessler investigated this mystery and said they weren't in a typical death pose, kind of like a cat that's curled up. It looked like they had just fallen over. We think this was just a very cold night, very still night. The geothermal gases accumulated, and then the bison just basically dropped where they were standing, end quote. So, on reflecting, scientists came to the conclusion that the bison had been killed by toxic mix of volcanic gases created by the magma below Yellowstone National Park. And also, what the documentary explained during the same series, quote, "The gases were identified as hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide, these 2 components of what's found just below the ground of Yellowstone, the boiling hot magma. The Yellowstone supervolcano sits on what geologists call a hotspot. Unlike other volcanoes in the world, Yellowstone is not cone-shaped with a crater at the top. Instead, it's a caldera, a large depression in the Earth's 15 miles long, 30 miles wide, formed during its last major eruption," end quote. So during this same series, the researchers claimed that the caldera below the park is a ticking time bomb. They said there is one volcano in the US with the potential to wreak devastation on a far greater scale. It's located 575 miles away from Mount St. Helens in the northwest corner of Wyoming. For over a century, tens of millions of visitors have marveled at Yellowstone's breathtaking scenery. However, beneath this spectacular beauty lies a ticking time bomb. Yellowstone is one of the largest volcanic systems on Earth, and scientists call it a supervolcano because of the size of past explosions, end quote. So, as we know, the theory comes from the last 3 caldera formations, 2.1 million years ago, 1.3 million years ago, and the last of the 3 major super eruptions, 630,000 years ago. And many believe this proves that we can expect another super eruption in the future, but USGS scientists say this theory could not be more wrong. From what the USGS website reads, quote, "First of all, one cannot present recurrent intervals based on only two values, and it would be statistically meaningless. But for those who insist, let's do the arithmetic. The three eruptions occurred 2.1 million, 1.3 million, and 0.64 million years ago. The two intervals thus are 0.8 and 0.66 million years ago, averaging to a 0.73 million year interval. And again, the last eruption was 0.64 million years ago, implying that we are still about 90,000 years away from the time when we might consider calling Yellowstone overdue for another caldera-forming eruption. Of course, here they mean super eruption. And they go to explain, nevertheless, we cannot discount the possibility of another such eruption occurring sometime in the future, given Yellowstone's volcanic history and the continued presence of the magma beneath the Yellowstone caldera. The magma, which is of course the magma reservoir underneath the magma chamber, and underneath the magma reservoir is a mantle plume. Now, according to the recent activity, Yellowstone earthquakes, for the past month we've had 133 earthquakes and a quake swarm over the area of the geyser basins. The Steamboat Geyser is heading for a record of Steamboat Geyser eruptions, something that started last year, in March of last year, which is a very unusual thing for the Norris Geyser Basin, which houses Steamboat Geyser, which is the biggest geyser in the world, and also a new geyser that has lately flared up in the Norris Geyser Basin, the Ledge Geyser. And also we have one of the biggest earthquakes that we had this past month of a 2.9 magnitude, and that was exactly in the area of the Old Faithful Geyser, Wyoming. Magnitude 2.89. Depth of 4.5 miles. So we do have a tremendous amount of activity. We also have deformation in the area of Norris because it's inflating, whereas the rest of the caldera seems to be subsiding. As far as the temperatures for Steamboat Geyser, the new monitoring equipment again is offline. It was working for about a week at the beginning of May. It worked for about a day and a half on July 22nd, showing rising temperature before the eruption, and then it went offline again. Something is going wrong with the monitoring of Steamboat Geyser, unfortunately. Hopefully they'll get that straightened out because it's an ongoing problem. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.